351, I'm on scene. I'll be assuming Caroline Street Command. I got a 2.5-story wood occupied multiple dwelling. I got heavy fire from the second floor, Charlie side. I have an exposure on the Delta side. We have one line stretch not in operation yet. Primary searches are underway. Status of the fire is doubtful. One passing command. I'm on the first line. Service be advised. We're on scene. 2-story wood frame. I got heavy fire from the Alpha side.
Welcome, fans of the Volley Chief. Today's episode is going to be a freelancing one, and I thought I would actually take a couple minutes. A couple weeks ago, we had Chief Hoffman on. We talked about the Joint Council and all the apparatus that enacts law, and this week in Connecticut, we have our first release of what we call the Fire Service Legislative Agenda, and several of the fire service organizations in Connecticut, they actually put out a tracking list of any bills that could affect the fire service. And, there's a lot of them. So for this session of the legislative agenda, it looks like there's almost 50 bills being proposed that would affect the fire EMS services. And it's, a different one from different standards, different sections apply to each different law, but it gives you basically a priority obviously it gives you the bill number, the priority, the title, what legislator introduced it, what committee it's going to, and the last action taken on. And it really just it's a good way to understand what's going on in your state. And again, this is how we do things in Connecticut, but you can track this. So I thought we'd take a minute and go over some of the bills being proposed and, just to give you an update on where things are. A lot of people don't realize this is something that you could be involved in. If your state is in the process of passing new legislation, get involved. Find out who authors these bills, find out when they go to their committees, find out when they have hearings on them. And it'll allow you to take part in the process of directing what goes on in your state and what goes on with your lawmakers. So I figure the first one we'll start with is one that I think is going to just kind of generate some buzz, and that's proposed bill number 1160 of the General Assembly. It was referred to the Public Health Committee, and it was introduced by Senator Hartlett in the 15th District of Connecticut, which kind of covers the Waterbury, I believe, Naugatuck area. But it's an act concerning emergency medical service protocol. Now, in Connecticut, the Department of Public Health handles the emergency medicine protocols, so this one kind of is like out there because most of them go to public safety, but this one goes to public health. And it is establish emergency medical service response protocols, including but not limited to, number one, establishing oxygen administration standards, which I don't know what that is about because there is protocols in the state for that. I'll skip section 2 because that's going to be a conversation, but we'll go to section 3, which is requiring emergency medical training and certifications to include protocols that prioritize patient care over administrative tasks and including but not limited to insurance verification. So my guess is somewhere along the line, someone felt that the EMS crew was prioritizing getting insurance information over medical care. But the number 2, the second part of the bill, is the one that is generating the most buzz around the state, requiring emergency medical services personnel to wear body cameras and record patient interactions with such cameras. Obviously, right off the bat, everyone jumps to HIPAA, right? You think, well, HIPAA, you're recording people. I think this day and age, everybody's starting to get used to the body camera concept in public safety. And I see value in officers, fire inspectors wearing body cameras, right? I mean, they worked out relatively well for law enforcement. But it's going to be interesting, though, because the machine, it's an unfunded mandate, so the machine behind the apparatus of having body cameras would be massive, right? That's where all the costs are. Your purchasing of equipment, your storing of the data, your storing of all that information becomes the problem. But again, these are what is proposed in front of our legislator. Now, there are some, like I always say, there are some different bills, if you will. We'll take here House Bill proposed number 5767 for the session of 2025, introduced by Representative D'Amico of the 21st District. And this bill here renames a portion of Connecticut Route 10 in the town of Farmington to be named in honor of the Farmington Volunteer Fire Department. Obviously it's like a gesture bill where it would create a section of a highway and to be named after the Volunteer Fire Department, which is very common in a lot of states. There's different processes for those types of apparatus for those types of honors to happen, but that's it's funny because, again, it's in there as one of the bill. Another bill that I think is going to have a little bit of buzz this year is House Bill, number 5205, authorizing the sale of consumer fireworks in the state of Connecticut. Chapter 541 of the General Statutes to be amended to authorize the sale of fireworks in this state. As you know, Connecticut admit showering spark only in the right now. That's all that's allowed. So I find that one to be interesting that we're going to be offering more fireworks in the state of Connecticut. Again, more bills that a lot of them are unfunded, and that's what kind of cracks me up, is that I don't think that people understand the actual intent of this bill. Here's a bill, proposed bill 6644 for the General Assembly. It's introduced by 5 different Assembly members, but Chapter 104 of the General Statutes be amended to provide that a paid or volunteer firefighter may obtain as a reasonable accommodation an additional set of turnout gear that does not contain PFAS if such firefighter has been diagnosed with cancer or predisposed for cancer, or is determined by a physician to have an increased risk of developing cancer compared to the average population due to such a firefighter's family history or results of genetic testing. Again, you're going to cause every fire department. Most fire departments do provide their members with 2 sets of gear. The state of Connecticut is on a plan to get rid of PFAS and turnout gear. So I don't know how much traction some of these bills are going to get, but just, giving you they're giving you what's out there. A lot of them cover tax breaks, tax incentives for volunteers, authorizing wreckers to use blue lights when responding to an accident. There's one that I think is interesting because, let's see, I had it, and now I got to try it. Here it is right here. House Bill number 5457 for the session, redefining peace officer to include local fire marshals, deputy fire marshals, and fire inspectors. It's out of Ben McGortney, which is down by me in the valley. Ben's a good friend of the fire and EMS service around us, but one of the things as a fire marshal that you have to deal with is you have to constantly interact with law enforcement, and you have to go through law enforcement a lot of times if you need warrants and you need apparatus because you are not a peace officer. Therefore, you have to get a peace officer to do some of the work. So that's kind of an interesting one. Let's see. Reimbursement for firefighter certification costs. There's a couple that I saw that I wanted to make PTSD a workman's comp issue. Where was funding for the regional? Hold on, I'm scrolling through the whole list of them. Here we go. This one I think is something that I spoke with my legislators about when I was fire chief. Bill number 6074. It is to specify the volunteer service requirement for the student loan reimbursement program includes volunteering for one or more nonprofits or religious activities, or volunteering as a firefighter or EMS personnel. So that would be pretty interesting to give a student loan reimbursement to volunteer firefighters. I think that's an excellent idea. That's something, again, that when I was fire chief, I spoke with my legislators about giving volunteers a discount or a break on student loans or on state schools, going to state schools. And again, those are some of them. There's almost 50 of them. An act concerning the failure to move over for an emergency vehicle. The resident landlord, it's a Senate bill, not a House bill. So it's Senate Bill 809, requiring non-resident landlords, project-based housing providers, are agents in charge of rental properties to register their personal identification information with the local fire marshal, which I think that's an absolute excellent statute for any of us who tried to find an owner of a property, and also create a penalty for people who violate it. So I think that's an excellent. It's in the Housing Committee. And again, you have to look around to see where these bills are. But it's just a short list, 50 bills out of the proposed legislative session. Now, we all know year after year, a lot of these bills will die coming out of committee. A lot of them will not be processed. Some will be enacted. There's been years where some have been enacted, and then they've held off on them because the language wasn't correct. There was issues with the different the wording, shalls, shall nots. So it is kind of interesting because you'll see over time how this evolves. And I think it's a great way, though, for members of the fire service to be involved in their state government, not just their local government. There's an act to provide benefits. There was the issue where there was a Connecticut state trooper who was killed in the line of duty, but their pension rules, he wasn't vested. Therefore, his family was unable to collect a pension. They fixed that last year, but now they're trying to permanently fix it for public safety providers. There's a grant to pay for training for financially depressed towns to get them training, which that grant actually has passed in the past. So they had that where that passed, and it allowed us in Derby to get free Firefighter 1 training through the state because we are a depressed municipality. There's tons of different bills, but these are great ways for you to get involved on a different level. They're a great way to get involved on a state level. A lot of people don't realize sometimes getting a law changed is really as simple as contacting your local legislator. If you're, a member of the department and there's a problem or something that needs to be changed, you can contact them and you can sit down and meet with them. And we invite them to all of our dinners. We invite them to all of our ceremonies. These are the times, sit down and say to them, hey, we need to talk. We don't think this is working. We don't think that's working. Here's why. Would you support legislation? And that's what gets the ball rolling. And it's a great way to make change in your town. You want to get reimbursed for having this certain standard, or you think that this standard needs to be changed. It's a great way to do it, is to sit down with your local legislators and ask them, can you draft a bill to change this? I read the public health bill regarding emergency medical services about the body cameras, and that says to me that there was some type of call that somehow a constituent, a family contacted this senator and sat him down and explained to him what happened on their call with their family member, and the senator drafted a bill. That maybe they felt they needed oxygen, maybe they felt they needed to be prioritizing medical care over trying to get insurance. And then the ambulance service said that they did all that, and that's where the body camera side comes in. So there's a story behind every one of these bills, and I think it's a great way for the fire service to stay involved. As I mentioned earlier, we had Chief Hoffman last a couple of weeks ago, talk about the Joint Council. The Joint Council will lobby in Connecticut for which bills they feel need to be passed most. One thing I will say about the proposed legislative schedule is the bills are assigned a priority between, low, medium, and high, and all 48 of these bills are assigned low priorities. So, some of them don't get them. One bill that comes up every year, House Bill 5056, it's to allow each municipality the option of assigning its own PSA. In the state of Connecticut, the ambulance services, the fire departments, the municipalities, depending on who it is, own what they call the PSA, which is basically the license to provide emergency medical care. I think it's a good system, the system we have in Connecticut, because it kind of prevents the companies, the paid for-profit companies from coming in and lowball and different departments, so you can't start taking over an area by lowballing everybody and then jack the price up. But one more I just saw, I figured I'd talk about too, because it's bill number 6655. It establishes a grant program to provide emergency equipment to volunteer fire companies that are in depressed municipalities. Originally, the grant just covered training. This one now says equipment. So that'll be interesting to see how that goes. But stay on top of it. Connecticut does a good job. They send out usually a weekly or bi-weekly report on where the bills are, whether they're in committee, if there's action that needs to be taken. The body cam one is going to be controversial, but law enforcement had to do it, and you could see a reasoning behind why you would want the fire service to do it. But the problem is it going to be an unfunded mandate, and then is it going to be a massive cost incurred to the fire service? So that's it. Next week, I should have some RIT talk. We're going to sit down with some RIT guys, talk some RIT. As always, if you're interested in being on the show, shoot me a message. I haven't scheduled recordings in a little bit. I got a couple recordings I've got scheduled. So that's it. Everyone be safe. We'll see you next week. Have a good night. FD1's back in service. Commands terminated.